go ahead and get started because we're going to end on time because we have just a 5-minute break before we go into small group. So before we talk about, I should probably have my slide deck up, huh? So small group practice session is by far and away the most fun part of this workshop. It is the time where you get to take everything that you have been learning and you get to practice it. So I was not up on my game and I am now trying to go and find my handouts because that's what ended up happening in my life right now. Okay, so we're gonna just use an old one. It's fine, it'll be fine. All right, so small group practice in person looks like moving from this room that you would be in that fits 30, 40, 50 people. And then we would gather up our things and we would walk down the hall into a smaller conference room with 4 to 6 people and a faculty member. And we'd sit around in a circle and we would practice certain skills. In a virtual format, there's something called a breakout room where you don't have to leave this big group in its formal sense. Instead, some virtual hallways have been made by Kathy, or she's going to be making them now. And you're going to see in just a few minutes as she's starting to make those breakout rooms now. You're going to see you have been invited to, it's going to pop up on your screen and it's going to say, you have been invited to breakout room, blah, blah, blah. Do you want to go or do you want to stay in the main room? Click stay in main room because I'm still going to be talking. Then at the end, I'll show you how to go into your breakout room, which will be at the bottom of your screen. The reason that we're saying no is I'm having Kathy go ahead and make those breakout rooms now versus taking 5 minutes of our time in the session. Okay. So you'll see the pop-up. Just say, no, I want to stay where everybody else is, and then we'll go into the breakout room in a little bit. I'm going to start sharing my screen and going over a couple of things. So obviously this is not June. I'm using an old one. I don't know where my other one went. I'm still Maggie, and I still don't have any disclosures. And in your handouts, you have all of this information of why small group practice is so great. But the main thing is this is your time to begin honing those skills. What I love about small group practice is you are going to work with the same 4 to 5 other group members, 4 to 5 group members every single small group practice session. And you're going to have a different faculty member from a different discipline. And so what's great about that is you're going to get a bunch of different perspectives and different teaching points. Faculty members have 2 very hard jobs in terms of the small group practice session. The first is we have to rotate. So we're going to be in a different group every time. So we have to make sure we keep that straight. And Kathy's in charge of that. So we're in good hands. And the second is we are going to be finding 2 to 3 teaching points for every single time you practice as the facilitator. And this is by the time we get to small group practice number 4, which is, I believe, on the last day of the second weekend, we're going to be really getting into those fine details because you're going to be so competent and confident in using this tool. And so here are all of the things behind, some research behind why we're doing this. There's going to be 4 small group practices, and the first one is going to be here in just a few minutes. They vary in length from, I believe, 90 minutes up to maybe an hour, or up to 105 minutes or 115 minutes. You will get a new faculty member every time. Here's where the old slide deck isn't going to work out very well. So I forgot to label these. So this is your group. various people from various different disciplines. Hopefully you're going to be matched relatively close to your same discipline, but it doesn't always work out that way. So what instead of showing you this, because it doesn't work, I didn't finish that one, I'm going to show you something else here to help you better understand. All right, so here's the format. So can you guys see the little bubbles? Yeah, okay. So when someone is the facilitator, okay, they're going to be working with someone, and that is going to be the recipient. So you will be working with a peer as the facilitator, and that peer will be the recipient. The recipient will then become the next facilitator. And so that means that as the recipient, we're going to make sure that you're fully reoriented. We talked a lot about that in the last last discussion. And then you will switch from being the recipient into the facilitator. There's also going to be an identified observer. That identified observer is going to be filling out a specific form. And that form looks like this. So the identified observer for each dyad is going to be filling out this form for what do you see? What do you notice as you're watching this facilitator and recipient in the hypnotic experience? This is what you'll use to give your feedback at the end of the practice session. Each small group is going to build on one another, and you're going to add in different techniques. And so the identified observer form is going to change. You see that this small group session 2 is a little bit longer. Session 3 is even longer, excuse me. And session 4 is even longer. We're now on 2 pages. So hopefully you have all of this. This should be in your left pocket of that blue folder that was sent to you, or hopefully you got it electronically. So that is what the rotation looks like. In this first small group practice, you're going to have 90 minutes to, I'm going to clear my throat here. Excuse me. You're going to establish rapport. Now, in the first session only, you're going to establish rapport in a very formalized way. You're going to use this form right here. The faculty is also going to be completing this form along with you. So everybody in the breakout room will have this form, whether electronically or in paper form. And we're going to take about 15 minutes of that 90 minutes to get to know each other a little bit better. And we use this form because we could spend the whole 90 minutes talking with each other. So instead, we're going to use the form as a guide. So what that would look like is you can handwrite, or for me, I'm just going to use typing as an example. I typically write things on my iPad instead. So what would happen is you go into, I say a circle. It's not a circle. We're not all in the same room. We're going to go around the breakout room, and everyone is going to answer these questions for themselves. So let's say that I'm the facilitator, and let's say that Amy Taylor is one of the participants in the breakout room, in the small group. And so she would say, hi, my name is Amy. I'm a psychologist. I have advanced training in hypnosis. These are my favorite hobbies. These are my favorite places, pets, all of that kind of stuff. Okay. And so as Amy is talking, you are filling out the form to write down anything that Amy says, because this is a great place for you to then formulate language specifically for Amy when you are facilitating trance with her. So if Amy says, and I know her quite well, so I'm going to kind of use what I know about her. Amy loves horses. She rides horses. So that may be some of the language that I use, some of the imagery that I use, if I know enough about horses to use that, right? If she says that a great day is, going on a trip somewhere, I may use that kind of language as well. Then the next person would go, and we'll say that that is Linda, and Linda has advanced training, right? So she's just going through and saying things. That's not spelled right, doesn't matter. Going through this same process. So everyone in the small group, you'll end up with all of these boxes filled out for every single one of the group members. Okay. And then you use this in all of your small groups in order to formulate language for them. This part here at the bottom, this isn't something that you were saying, my primary sensory or learning system is. This is what we're using as we get to know you in future groups. I may hear you say something like, I think in pictures. Or we may hear you say, I feel you. I feel what you're saying right now. Right. So that's giving us some better ideas of what your primary sensory learning language may be. Any meaningful phrases that continue to come up with someone, we're going to write that down in our notes throughout every single small group session. Right. So that is the rapport form. Now we're going to go back to this thing. So that's going to take up about 15 minutes worth of your first small group. Then every single member, I think the groups are broken up into groups of either 4 or 5. And so you will then practice the elicitation number 1, which is going to be diaphragmatic breathing, which Lane will be sharing with you here in just a moment here at 1:15 Eastern, so 15 minutes from now. You're going to practice that. Then you're also going to practice reorientation, which is what we just talked about at the end of the last discussion. And so that is all you will be doing in your session for small group practice 1. Remembering that you are always getting a pre and post orientation alertness scale. So you can use that 0 to 100 that we talked about. You can use another formalized technique if you have one. I find 0 to 100 be really easy. It's also easy to teach clients. So 100 being your usual level of alertness and wakefulness. Where are you right now? And then you ask them again at the end. If they're not back at their usual level of alertness and wakefulness, not back at that 100, you'll want to take a few moments to help them get there. Right. And we talked about ways to do that, asking them what do they need or giving them some direction. In the second small group session, you're going to practice something called an eye fixation, which will be demonstrated to you right before the next small group session. You will then add in an intensification that you're going to choose. And we're going to have a lecture on intensification before the next small group session. And then you're going to practice a different type of reorientation. So we didn't talk about too many, but between now and the next small group, you'll be able to see a couple of people. You'll be able to see a couple of demonstrations, and you'll also have a few minutes, a little while to kind of dig into your notes and see what you find. I keep doing this, don't I? There we go. Session 3, you're doing everything you were doing before. This elicitation is going to be an eye roll. Again, that's going to be demonstrated to you. So you practice what you were demonstrated. You're going to have a different intensification, but this time you're going to be adding in some suggestions. So there's going to be a goal that's going to be set, and you're adding in some ego strengthening. And so these are things that will be talked about before your third session, which is the next weekend that we meet. And then again, another reorientation. And then the session 4, this is going to be the last practice session. And it is going to be where you're doing kind of all the things that you saw Lane facilitate with me yesterday. So that rapport building is very, very short in session 2, 3, and 4, because you've spent 15 minutes setting up that rapport with people in the first small group session. So rapport building is anywhere between a minute to 90 seconds for sessions 2, 3, and 4. And you're just setting a goal, setting up the hypnotic session,